Lesson number 5 is all about discount rates and how they are misleading. You can go to a dinner party or sit at a pub and talk about interest rates, or go to a barbecue, and someone at that barbecue might be talking about, I got a 2.95 or a 3% discount off my standard variable rate. And other people at that barbecue are going to go, whoa, that is like a lot more than what I got. I might have only got a 1.9 or a 2.4, and automatically they're starting to think that their interest rate or their home loan may be uncompetitive. Well, that's where this is misleading. And so in this video lesson, I'm going to be talking to you about how all of this has worked out. Now, what we're talking about here is standard variable rates. Now, the standard variable rate is effectively the rack rate. It's the highest charging rate that a bank or lender will set, and then they'll start to look at discounting off that particular rate. So I'll do an example in a minute, but so it's less the discount is what we're focusing on. And remember, we're trying to get to what we refer to as the true rate, not necessarily these advertised rates or these negotiated rates. The other thing, as I go into this example, I also just want you to remember that size of loan also does matter. So in terms of the size of the discount, which is true, but also working that out and subtracting that off. So let's do an example here where we go and have a look at a couple of different websites. Now, we were here before when it comes to the home loan rates for Suncorp. And we can start to see, so this is that special page that we went to before. It's interesting how Suncorp put their information together. What they've got is the net interest rate, the comparison rate, and their discount that's inclusive. So when we start to see, we look at something like their most expensive, we can start to see that they've got the standard variable rate for principal. We've got a 4.29 or a 4.03, and then you've got this large discount attached to that. So we start to look at that investment loan and we start to say to ourselves, wow, that's quite an expensive rate, because what's actually happening here is the 3.17 plus the 4.03, the standard variable rate in Suncorp's case is actually 7.2. So everyone's thinking, wow, I just talk about the discount that I got off that. You do want to be net interest rate, or what I call the true interest rate, is what we're interested in here. So that comes out at 4.3. Now let's take a look at another lender and let's see what their standard variable rate is showing. So let's look at CBA. And we can see here their standard variable rate on principal and interest loan is actually 6.3. So we can start to see, and that's without any wealth packages or professional packages where you start to see some of those discounts take shape. Now, why is this important? It's really important because it's clouding the market. You're actually starting to see hundreds of different interest rates, and if not thousands of different interest rates, because what have we already learnt from our other lessons? You're talking about principal and interest loans versus interest only. Then you've got principal or own home loans versus investment purposes. So all of a sudden there's these multiple, then you've got layers of loan to value ratios, and then you've got borrowing capacities. So you can start to see that there are an enormous amount of different ways in which we can do it. So if we think about what we just learned, we had the 7.3, okay, we got the 3.17 discount, which gave us a rate of 4.83%. But what if we did have, say, the CBA loan, which was 6.3%, and they gave us a 2.4% discount? We're actually paying 3.9% for that money. So which one was the better deal? The lender who gave us this big discount, this 3.17% discount, or is this discount even better because we're ultimately ended with a cheaper true rate? That's what you've got to remember here. This is effectively the way in which it becomes very, very confusing in terms of how to work out which is the best deal. Now, it's not necessarily just through the fault of the banks in terms of building all this complexity. We've learnt before in terms of the way in which the banks have to manage net interest margin and how they source the funds of money. And the reality is if you have lower loan to value ratios and you're sourcing that money cheaper, you can pass on some of those discount costs. And remember in lesson number 4, we were talking about that size matters in terms of how you can negotiate for a better deal. So it's a big takeaway that, there's misleading information that's out there. Now, they're not intentionally misleading you. That's my point. But what I am saying is you don't want it to be, discussed at a barbecue or a dinner party and think you're not on a very good deal. What you need to be doing is working out your true rate in terms of what you're actually paying. And that's the big message here. Which brings me to the most critical point here, which I've been trying to underline. Suncorp call it the net interest rate you're paying. I call it the true interest rate you're paying. And this is where I want to show you how you might be able to do this calculation. Now, there's going to be some caveats on this. Okay, so here's one of the calculators that we have in our business that allows us to get an idea in terms of how we can calculate the true cost. Now, remember, some big disclaimers here. This is only looking at a mortgage period, a term of loan far shorter than the 25 years or 30 years that the contract in your loan might say. And this is us basically saying to you before about comparison rates. My view on this, and this is what I would tell you as a client, is that we want to be looking at a 5-year horizon for this particular loan at the actual longest, because there is going to be competition in the marketplace and things are going to change. Now, if those things don't change, that's great. We've still got a good rate at that time. But we do know as rates are going up or rates are coming down, lenders are going to play around with their interest margin. And so as we see rates going up, they usually pass on that full amount. But if rates start to come down over the years to come, they may not pass on that full amount. And that's what we have seen in the past. And that is how they will potentially get that net interest margin a little bit higher. So I know this is close in, so we'll go into a close in shot and I'll paint the picture for us. So we've got a $750,000 mortgage. Currently, we've got a 4.5% interest rate. We originally paid we were paying $395 in fees. We've got a termination fee of $350. And as I said, I've set this loan term into a tighter period to try and calculate the true interest rate. So the true interest rate based on this analysis says that even though the rate is 4.5, my true cost of borrowings is 4.81. Now, again, that regular fee is an annual fee of $395. And you can see that spelled out through here in terms of spelt right through this area here in terms of total ongoing fees. So you calculate up all of the initial fees, then the ongoing fees, you do a sum of those, and then we turn that into a ratio or a percentage in terms of that. Now, let's say we've got a couple of lenders that we want to compare that against. And so we now start to put in all of those fees and charges for the upfront, and then we start to look at, and here's where I've got the rebates coming in here. So there's some of the cashbacks offers that might be available from those different lenders. And then you can see if there's any annual package fees, any other charges, the discharge fee, any settlement fees, and back in the day there was also break costs or early payout fees and those types of things. They are still available on fixed rate loans, so that's something we've got to be mindful of. And then if there was any other rewards or any other sort of short-term interest rates. So we do these types of calculations every day and analyse each of those. But because you're actually doing it day in, day out, you actually know where the best deals are. You don't have to keep coming to the calculator every time in which you're doing it. But you can then start to see the analysis here with those cashbacks is that some of those interest rates will be a lot more competitive than the 4.81 that you're paying. And so you can then start to see the savings that you might be making over the turn of what I call the assessed loan term period. That D is obviously problematic for me, but you can see it basically there in terms of that 5-year period. So that's the assessed term. So is this counter to the comparison rate? Full disclosure, 100%. Is this what you want? Well, if you're a client of mine, I've got, responsible lending obligations, but I also have an obligation of trying to get you what I would think is the best deal. So from a regulatory point of view, I actually think that this is potentially helpful for you if you can start to think about all of those other costs. But like what we said in lesson number 2, where comparison rates are well intentioned, but not necessarily perfect, the same principles will apply here, that if you were to change a loan or to do things to your loan or incur additional fees, that figure would also change attached to that. But it really is an important message when I talk about the way in which you need to be looking at your numbers and looking at the cost of your borrowings. We saw in the introductory video that there's around $70,000 on the table, and that was for literally only a $500,000 mortgage. As those mortgages get bigger, those numbers start to stack up. And if you were to trap that money and put that into your offset account every month, ultimately you'll be paying less and less, and you'll be saving maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest over the life of the loan as part of that. So that rounds out our conversation when it comes to discount rates can be misleading. Don't be fooled by that. Try and get to that true rate. And you saw before, we didn't have the discount rates in there. What we did is we inputted those net rates, the true rates, straight in, and then did the additional costs of running that mortgage as well. So really important to understand exactly how all this plays out, and you can start to see it there. So closing out, discount rates are misleading. Standard variable rates aren't really worth the paper that they're written on. The discounts, well, they're important, but really it comes down to what the rate gets to, and then starting to calculate your other fees and charges to get down to your true interest rate over a shorter period of time is what you want to be looking at. So that rounds out lesson number 5. So thanks for watching that educational session. As you know, I'm passionate about this stuff, and I really do want to see you take action. Now, whether you do that yourself, that's fine. But if you do need help, I am super proud of our mortgage team here at Empower Wealth, and they would love to help you. They are helping thousands of people every year, just like you. They're multi-award winning. We've won customer service awards and national awards for the work that we do. So I know that they will be able to look after you. So leave your details below, but please make sure you do something with this information and knowledge that you've just learned about. Now let's get into the next episode.